Thank you so much for clicking on our video. My name is Skyly and I am the founder of Forever Counts Real Estate Group. If you've clicked on this video, it means that you are looking to brainstorm with other entrepreneurs, you are looking to grow your business, and that is so exciting because we want to collaborate with you. That is the whole point of the collaborative mastermind movement that we have created. So thank you again for clicking on the video. I hope you find tremendous value in every video that you watch, and I'm excited to have you on this journey with us.
Oh, really exciting, you guys. Before Jamie gets started, she's not going to brag about herself, but guess she just won the Newcomer Year Award for all of Canada.
Nice.
New broker. What is that, like Rookie of the Year award? I'm so happy.
Basically, yeah. It's the Newcomer of the Year for individual agent. I know I was really, really shocked, and I was very honored and excited because it's a peer nominated award. And there's a judging panel and stuff. So it's based on the merit of the nominations and means a lot.
It's really exciting. I'm very happy for you.
Thank
you. Jamie's taking over today. She is a mortgage broker, not a realtor, but that's okay. Because I feel like even though this isn't really like realtors aren't really supposed to talk about this stuff. I mean, we can give our personal opinion, but we obviously have to give a disclaimer like, hey, we're actually not experts in this field. You need to talk to blank. I do feel like it's very valuable for realtors and even people in affiliated industries to be able to have open conversations about this kind of stuff. And I mean, the whole point is that we add value to our clients too. I was actually talking to a realtor about this earlier, and having these conversations and relationships with brokers so we can have educated conversations is obviously going to be really, really important to, again, add value to our clients. So, yes.
Thank you. Thanks, awesome. Skyly. No, I appreciate that. And I love that about working with you guys, because you are all about that, having that extra piece, but then you also sort of acknowledge and like push the client along in the right direction. But having that knowledge base in your back pocket can be really helpful, especially if your clients have, gone with somebody that they know, a friend of a friend that you don't know very well. So there's not they're not one of your referral partners. So maybe you might want to have these extra knowledge sets in your back pocket just to check in and make sure that, they're making an informed decision for themselves, right? That's all we want. So I was just going to really quickly, before I went to the spreadsheet, to show you. So basically the purpose of this presentation is to go through the difference between fixed rate and variable rate. There's all sorts of different mortgage products, but it kind of comes down to the fixed versus variable for a lot of folks. So we'll just kind of hop right into it. So the fixed rate, most people are really familiar with fixed rate options. They're the ones that they're actually linked to bond yields. Fixed rates are linked to bond yields. They're technically riskier assets for the banks, which is why the rate is usually higher than what we'd see for the variable rate. And the reason why I say that it's riskier is that if the bond yield continues to go down and the bank has already lent out at a lower rate, then it's riskier for them because it's costing them more money on that loan, which is why they kind of they bonus it up. It's less risky for them. Most people generally think of the fixed rate as being safer for us, because we know every month that our payment is going to be the same. It's going to remain the same for the entire term of the mortgage. You know that you can afford that monthly payment. And so it just feels safe and comfortable. And it's also good to know that the fixed rate historically has always been higher than the variable rate.
Can we just rewind for 2 seconds, Jamie, just for anybody who doesn't know like what a fixed and a variable rate even is? Because I think that, people who are first-time homebuyers are possibly going to watch this too. And if we're just talking about like fixed and variable, I don't know if everyone's going to what we're even talking about. So if we can just rewind and talk a little bit about start from the beginning if we can. I don't know.
Yeah, sure. So the fixed rates are exactly that. They're fixed. It's the same rate. You get it when you sign up for your mortgage. Right. It stays the same. That rate will be charged on the amount of your mortgage. And that's your monthly payment of principal and interest. It's fixed. It's going to stay the same throughout the entire term. A variable rate mortgage is linked to the overnight lending rate. It's a different thing, and it can fluctuate when prime increases and decreases. So your payment can go up, it can go down depending on what's happening with the overnight lending rate. Does that make sense?
Right. So when you get your mortgage, you get the option between picking between a fixed rate or a variable rate. And that obviously whichever one you lock into is going to make a difference between the interest rate you're paying when you get your mortgage.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Exactly. They're different rates and they're linked to different things. So like that's a common misconception because we'll see in the media a lot lately, like rates are on the rise and da, 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 da. And so people with variable rates actually start panicking, even though what they're really talking about in the media is fixed rates and you're in a variable rate. So they kind of generalize, they make these blanket statements about the market. And it's true that variable rates have also been increasing, but we'll get into that a little bit more in depth. But yeah, so it's important to know that everybody has these options between the fixed and the variable rate when you apply for a mortgage, among many other things. To kind of further complicate things just a tiny, tiny bit, there are two different types of variable rate mortgages. One where your payment does fluctuate with prime. So if prime goes up, your payment's going to increase a little bit. If it goes down, it will decrease. That's the true variable rate mortgage. There's another type of variable rate mortgage that has a static payment. So it's like fixed in the sense that your payment won't change, but what fluctuates is within that payment, how much of it's going towards principal and how much of it's going towards interest.
Interesting. Okay.
Okay. So we'll go through it a little bit more detail on the slides, but I wanted to show you this average 5-year mortgage rate since the 60s, because, again, like in the news, we see a ton about people panicking over rates and things like that. But I always like to go back to this to show that, yes, we did have these crazy rates in the 80s. But you can see that since then we've really leveled out, and yes, we've been dipping down a little bit, but you can see how long it took for us to get there. I don't want to read too much into it because I'm not an analyst, but you can look at this hopefully and see the length of time that it takes to make any dramatic changes in the market. And they might feel very dramatic to us in the time that it's happening. But when I hear people talking about this sort of situation, when we're down here, you can see how that's a little bit maybe extreme.
Yeah. Like it's not going to just jump up again overnight. Like this was like 20 something plus years, right?
Right.
More than that, 40 years. You said this was in
this is in the 80s here, like in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s.
Right. Yeah.
So okay. 20 years to go from 6.9 to 21.
Yeah.
So like 20 years to jump that high. That's
so, yeah, I always like to show this. Like I kind of go through this with all my clients, not quite this slow. Maybe I should, but I usually do a quick recording and then we do a personalized video on what their current options are for a fixed versus variable rate. And I'll show you what we do on that later, but I do show this stuff first, just to give people a sense. So this one's a little bit cleaner of a graph. So you can see that this is in the blue is the fixed rate. And in the green is the variable rate. And you can see this is since 2008. And we did have, some issues happening in the market around 2008 that we all probably in this meeting right now remember, where we had a bit of a market crash. Things were going on during that time that did affect the market. And so that's why we had these increased rates at that time. But anyways, you can see over the course of time that variable rate has always been lower than the fixed rate. And I just like to show that on there as well.
Like people always talk about like what happened in 2008, right? With like the crazy market crash, and it still only went up to like 5-ish.
Yeah.
Right. So like when people are like, it's going to get to 19% again, it's like, but even in 2008, which it didn't even get up that high. So I don't know. I think it's like good to show.
I think we've learned a lot. Yeah. From the mistakes of the 80s and stuff like that. I mean, again, I don't have a crystal ball, but I do like looking at these graphs as a reminder of what has happened historically, and we can make whatever implications you want in your brain, or maybe it just makes you feel a little bit more comfortable about change, but you certainly have to understand it. I think a little bit, the variable rate, at least if you're going to go in that direction, so that you don't, the last thing I want is somebody to take on the variable rate without really understanding it. And then freaking out when they see things in the news, or if rates go up, for example, and they're worried they can't afford their payment and those types of things. So it's really good to have a thorough kind of understanding or conversation about it. So yeah. So how does prime rate impact variable rate mortgages? So if prime goes up, as we said, your mortgage rate will increase. If prime decreases, your mortgage payment will decrease. So for example, if you have a mortgage with a prime, and that's the other thing too, when you have a variable rate mortgage, typically like right now in the market, what you get is a discount from prime. So let's say your discount from prime when you sign up for your mortgage is minus 0.65%. That means no matter what's happening with the variable rate, your discount is always going to be 0.65% from that prime rate. So like right now, my mortgage is prime minus 1.35, I think.
Right. And then prime is like the posted rate of Canada, like the
overnight lending rate.
Right. And that's posted by the like Bank of Canada.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You got it. So currently prime rate is 3.2%. So if that was your discount from prime, that would mean your current mortgage rate is 2.55%. And if prime increases by a quarter, usually when it goes up by about a quarter of a percent. Last time it went up by 0.5%. So
Right.
we've seen that happen a couple of times, but so then your mortgage rate will increase. I forgot to change this number down here, but it'll increase by that percentage. So how many times a year can it change? There's 8 different announcements throughout the year. And I have the schedule posted on a slide here. I'll show you at the end.
It can only change 8 times.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
That's how many scheduled announcements that they have each year. And they don't always do anything. And that's why I wanted to show this slide here. So this shows you the prime rate changes since 2010. And I think this is a really important one to look at, especially now, because so we know that before COVID, we were at 3.95% for the variable rate. And then they tried to, help support the economy, get things going. Real estate was really the only thing that was happening at the time. And they were also trying to help people that were, becoming unemployed. There was a lot of uncertainty. So they cut the rate back. Look at how dramatically they did that. March 10th, it went down 0.5%. March 17th, 0.5%. 31st, these were like emergency announcements, another 0.5%. So we went from 3.95, where we had kind of been floating around 3, getting closer to 4 in 2018. And then COVID pandemic hits, they cut rates dramatically, and they kept them the same until March 8th of this year. So 2 years, they didn't touch those rates. And that's why we saw the boom. I mean, we saw the boom for multiple reasons, but interest rates over the last 2 years before March, they were the lowest they've ever been since the beginning of lending, like since the Renaissance times. People didn't lend money at the rate that we lent money during this time. It was never sustainable in the long run. Nobody should be shocked that rates are going up right now, because that's an insane amount to borrow $500,000 at that rate. It's insane to me. So I'm happy that we lived like during that time. Hopefully we all got to take advantage of that a little bit. I know a lot of people did, because at the same time, the equity in our houses was increasing, right? So a lot of people were able to like get in there, take some equity out at this low rate. Maybe they invested some of that into the stock market. Maybe they got the renovation done in their house, paid for kids' school, whatever it was. But it was a really good opportunity over the last couple of years to make those kinds of moves. And a lot of people did. And that's why I think there's been like a little bit of a disparity lately since the pandemic in the people that have done really well, who came out of that doing okay, versus people who struggled through that. I mean, we all struggled through it, but you can see how these rates like can have such a profound effect on what's going on in our market today.
Yeah. It's crazy that we're still not even at the like October 30th, 2018. It was 3.9. And I remember in 2018, people weren't freaking out about interest rates. It was fine. But the conversations that I'm having right now with every single person in our database is that they're like, nope, they're going up. We want to wait. We want to see what's going to happen and all this stuff. But we're not even where we were at in October of 2018. I think that now rates are going to be the lowest that they will be over the next few years. So people should lock in at this rate, because we're not even what we would have been in 2018 yet.
Yeah. And you can kind of see like the pattern here. If you go back to 2010, like we go low, they cut it back, they increase it too fast. Then we cut it back, and then they increase it again, and then they cut it back again. I mean, like the government is cognizant of the fact that like the economy is so dependent on what's going on in these markets, and they owe money at the same rate too. So it's something, think about the amount of debt that they took out over the last 2 years. So
they don't want crazy amounts. Like you said, they owe the same amount. They pay the same amount of interest we do. So
so I don't know. It's food for thought, right?
Yeah, totally.
Even knowing that there is a schedule is helpful, because I feel like a lot of clients have been like, oh my gosh, they're like every couple of months they're talking about it. They've always talked about it. Like that's nothing that's new. But I feel like because there's a conversation happening right now, that's what's like making people more freaked out.
Yeah, it's scary. I mean, and it's scary when you're looking for houses and you're reading all this stuff. And I don't know. I try to ignore it, and hopefully you can help your clients try to ignore it too. So I'm gonna hop into the next one that I would go through with clients. So this is just a straight up how I show them about the variable versus fixed rate, and hopefully this will kind of blow your mind a little bit. So I'm going to use the mortgage amount of $500,000 since Skyly, what's the average price of houses in Kamloops today? 6 something.
I think it's more than that. I think that we're in the 700 range, but they might back down a little bit. I think 700 was like the last like bracket we talked about.
Okay. Wow. So yeah, let's assume a mortgage amount of $500,000. So you've bought your house, you've put your down payment in, we've subtracted that amount from your mortgage. So this isn't like a purchase price, it's your mortgage of $500,000. We do a 25-year amortization is generally what people do. That just means that we're charging interest at over that period of time, over 25 years, even though the term itself is going to be probably less than that. The average term most people take is 5 years. So assuming those kind of normal-ish variables, we're going to plug in these numbers. So we've got today, let's say we could get a fixed rate of 4.19%. That would be a good rate to get today on a 5-year high ratio mortgage, meaning less than 20% down. The current prime rate we know is 3.2, but some lenders are offering a discount from prime of 0.95%. So this is what we're comparing. We're comparing the 4.19% to the current variable rate. So down here, I've got your term. So we've got 5 years in the columns going down. And then we have the months of the year going across this way. So right now it's set to 0. So for an increase, I would have to enter some increases, and I'm going to run some scenarios to show you, but just for the sake of comparison, we're going to add nothing. So let's pretend like prime doesn't go up again or go down over the next 5 years and see how that looks. Okay. So on the left-hand side here, you can see we've got our fixed rate, 25-year AM. The monthly payment is going to be $26.81, and it will not change your entire 5 years. That's going to be your thing. So you can see at the very bottom here, if there's numbers down here, it's winning. So we know that the variable rate is obviously going to be winning in this scenario because it's straight up lower, and we didn't put any increases to the rate at all. So of course it's going to end up being a sweeter deal. But I just wanted to show you so you can see straight up how much more interest you pay with the fixed rate versus the variable rate, because of course it's a lower interest rate. At the end of the day, you can see at the bottom, you're saving $45,000 in interest, and you're going to pay down an extra $15,000 of principal on your mortgage amount. So the reason why is because you're paying higher interest rate over here. So less of your monthly payment is going to be going towards the principal balance of your mortgage, plus you're paying higher interest. So the payment is higher to accommodate for the higher rate. You're paying less on the principal, you're paying higher interest. Whereas on this side, it's a lower interest rate because it's 2.25%, that 3.2 minus the 0.95%. That's your net rate. So your payment is smaller, but a larger amount of that payment is going to be going towards principal the entire time. So you're going to pay down the mortgage quite a bit faster. So you can see this is the balance at the end of 5 years, and the variable rate, your balance be $421,000, assuming again, nothing changes with prime, versus $436,000 at the end of 5 years for your fixed term. Does that make sense?
So you're saying you paid down an extra $15,000 when you do off of the mortgaged amount on the variable one than you would.
Yeah. Plus you paid less interest. You paid $45,000 less interest.
Whoa. That's insane.
Over the course of 5 years. Yeah. So, I mean, people who took a variable rate 3 years ago or 5 years ago, like they've really saved a ton of money. You can see the fixed rates were lower at the time too, but it's still, so I'm going to show you. So now what we're going to do, we're going to plug in some, what's that?
I was just going to say, like, I feel like people don't, when you think about, 4% to, well, I guess 4%, and then this one's 4.19. And then you said that the variable was actually like 2 point something. So it is a big difference. But I mean, when you're thinking about like, it's like 2%, it's not a huge deal. And you're like, it's like $45,000 of a big deal. It's
a huge deal. I know. And especially when people get really funny about when they're shopping for rates and stuff like that. They're like, so-and-so offered me and it's 0.01% less or this and that. And you're like, really over the course of time, but they don't, you're not looking at the big picture of some things too, right? How little the effect of that is, but we'll talk more about that too. So, okay. Now we know the prime rate's likely going to increase, right? There's a whole bunch of different analysts that have predicted different things, but I'm not an analyst and I don't pretend to know what really is going to happen. So what I like to do is just put in some numbers and kind of do some aggressive scenarios to show what could happen, worst case scenario. So that way my clients who have signed up for a variable mortgage over the last year, they can go back to this video that I share with them and say, oh no, I remember Jamie added 8 increases and we were still winning. So I'm going to say that we're going to have another increase here next month. Let's say I'm going to add 8 increases over the next 5 years. Okay. And 3 of them in the first year.
Right.
Another 3 from what we've already seen. So we've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. 8 increases. So this would mean that the prime lending rate would be 5.2. And if you remember the chart that I showed before, we haven't seen a rate of 5.2 since 2008. So I've plugged in those 8 increases, 3 of them being aggressively in the very first year that you take on your mortgage. And let's see. Okay. So you can see actually that the variable rate is still winning out when compared to the fixed rate in terms of the amount of savings that you make on interest and the amount of principal that you're able to pay down on your mortgage. So the balance of your mortgage is still going to end up being slightly lower with a variable rate at 431 at the end of your 5 years versus 436. And you're going to save $15,000 in interest payment because even though your rate is going to be higher at the end, because it's going to surpass that 4.19%. But because of the savings that you made early on in the term, and because you've paid down your principal that much more, the rate doesn't have as strong of an effect on your bottom line, I guess, at the end of the 5 years.
So if your mortgage rate went up over the 4.19, are we able to see because obviously if someone wants to go this way and then they're like looking at the scenario, they'd obviously have to make sure that they could afford.
Yeah. So at this rate, okay, that's a good question. So you can see if you had taken the fixed rate, your payment right away would have been $26.81 a month.
Right.
And it would have been $21.80 over here. But at the end of all of these increases, your payment would be closer to $3,000 a month, which is $320 more a month than the fixed rate.
Right. But like you said, I guess in the long run, you still save money on your principal and you saved money on your interest rate as well. So even though you're paying, you'd also have to go up, like you said, like 8 times.
Yeah.
0.5, 8 times, I guess, in order for this even to happen. And it hasn't even been that high since 2008. So what's the likelihood again, right? We went through a pandemic and we didn't even shoot up.
Exactly. And when they recalculate your payment, it's based on what the principal balance is at that time. So it could be less than that.
Right. So you're paying down the principal as you go along, right?
Yeah.
So depending when.
Yeah, exactly. So if I go back here and I'm going to add 2 more, because I think that might put us over the edge. So now we've got 10 increases. Okay. So I'm going to add 12 increases now. Okay. I'm going to make this one 0.5 because that's really soon. So you don't have that time in the beginning to pay it down. So now we have 11 of 0.25% and 0.5% that happens immediately. Now you're kind of balanced out.
That's crazy.
And another thing to think about too, and that this is a little bit less now than it used to be before, but when you take a fixed rate, if you break that mortgage, the penalty that they calculate with the lender, it depends on the lender, but generally speaking, it's worse at big banks. Okay. Monoline lenders that specifically don't have a brick and mortar place, but they focus on lending with mortgages. Their penalties can be like less severe, but it's the same type of calculation that the big banks. So what they charge you is an interest rate differential penalty. And what that penalty is, I think I can stop sharing this, right? What that penalty is the difference between your current rate and the posted rate. Not the advertised rates that you see in the news, that their posted rates are the ones that are ridiculously high. So they calculate the difference between those rates and the term that's remaining on your mortgage. So if you have a lower rate, if you have a significantly lower rate than what the posted rate is, then it might be okay. But if it's close to or being the same, then the penalties can be really severe, like in the thousands and thousands of dollars. So that's another thing to consider. So if you are in a fixed rate, reach out to your broker, because there are certain time points where this changes, because your posted rate, it's comparable to what you have left in your term. So they have different posted rates for a 5-year term, for 3, 2, 1, and so on. So reach out to a specialist so they can try to give you an idea of, okay, you know what, if you wait a few months to break, your penalty could be worse. So get it done now versus later. So there's the interest rate differential penalty, which goes along with the fixed rate mortgages, versus the variable rate mortgage. If you take on the variable rate mortgage, the penalty is 3 months interest. Generally speaking, like half of what your monthly payment is times 3.
Yeah, it's a big difference, because I had a client, this was like 2 years ago at least now, but I remember he bought a townhouse and he got locked in for the 5-year fixed, and he decided at the 2-year mark, he's like, I don't want a townhouse anymore. Like, I should have known better than to get a townhouse, because he has a dog and there was only a common area at the back. And he's like, I don't want more. And so I remember he was like, how much can I sell my place for? And blah, blah, blah. And like calculating out what he could sell it for, and like the fees to sell it, plus the penalty. He wouldn't even have had enough of a down payment to go buy anything else after the 2 years, because the penalty on his rate was huge. I think it was like $16,000 or something.
Yeah, depending on the size of your market, like they can be very severe.
And a client who was going to sell it, it was $30,000 for them to break their fixed.
Oh, crazy. And like Cody and I, we have a variable rate, and so we're refinancing this year. We've lived here for a year and a half, I guess. We're refinancing because we renovated the crap out of this house. And so we're like, oh, we might as well pull out some equity to like finish some stuff off and add some stuff on. My penalty is only $2,000.
Yeah.
Because we're variable. It's
exactly.
wild.
It gives you a lot more freedom. So like, it's definitely a discussion that we have with, you know, people who are young, starting a family or not married yet, like, cause there's so many different changes that happen. Like, let's say between really any time in life, because even later in life, there's divorce, there's more children, or there's children moving out. So those are the types of things that we always want to talk about when we're working with a client. It's not just about like, okay, you know, I'm not just an order taker. I've tried to really get a grasp on what their goals are and what their hopes and aspirations are, because if you don't ask, you don't really know. And sometimes people don't think about, you know, their 5-year plan or 10-year plan, and they don't think about their mortgage in relation to it, right? Because most people don't think about mortgages at all, which is, I mean, good. Like, let us worry about it, because it's not like the most fun thing to think about. We talked about this last time we were on the Zoom, and you know, everybody wants a house, but nobody really wants a mortgage.
But a lot of people get their mortgage and they don't even know what they have. And I'm like, it's really important that they know what they have so that they can plan their future too. 5 years, maybe when you blink, oh my God, 5 years is gone already. But when you're in the heat of 5 years and you're like itching to do something and you're locked in, it sucks. So like, good to have those conversations in advance before you actually do lock in for a 5-year fixed term.
Yes. And locking in too, for sure. Like you said, because if you do take a variable rate, you always have the option to lock in at any time to what the current offering is for the fixed rate. So before you do that, definitely reach out. We'll run the scenario together and make sure that it makes sense for you, right? Because, you know, in the moment you might feel like, oh my gosh, like rates are going to go up again. And then, but we run the scenario and they're like, yeah, maybe it's okay, rather than taking that 4%. And then I wanted to talk about like super quick, cashback mortgages. So we have mortgages where you can actually you get extra money at the end.
Right. You were telling me about this one.
When you close. So this one's really interesting. We can use it in combination with a purchase plus improvements, because as you know, the weird thing about the purchase plus improvements is that you don't get the money until the work is done. That can sometimes be a problem if people don't have the money in their pocket to like start paying for things as they go, or if they can't find a contractor that's willing to kind of front the whole project. So you can combine that with a cashback mortgage. So you have a little bit of money to work with in the beginning, or some people use the cashback mortgage because we can actually use that to offset some of the debts in order to have them qualify for a little bit more. We can't use it for closing costs, but we could use it to like pay off something that they need to pay off before closing in order to qualify for that mortgage. So those are a couple of cool ones that we do.
Yeah, we should. I'm going to write this down because I feel like it'd be really cool for us to do another video on like, because I did the purchase plus improvement and then the cashback that you have too, which is really cool because a lot of people don't know it's an option. And so I'll be shopping with someone for a house and they'll be like, oh, it's everything that I want, but I freaking hate tops in the flooring. And so like, it's a deal breaker. And I'm like, but what if I could pull that into your mortgage for you and you get everything you want? But they didn't know it was an option. So
right.
No, it's cool to have all the options, and like you being a broker too, you can shop around and put people where they fit properly instead of having to fit a, what is that saying? The round peg into a square.
Yes,
or
exactly.
But
I like how you said it. I think that sounds about right. But yeah, that's the other good thing about working with a broker, because that's our job, is to kind of do the shopping for you. And I try to always give people at least 3 options to choose from, so that, you know, they're in control of the decision that they make, because it's huge, right? It's a big commitment. It's a huge amount of money, and it's not to be kind of taken lightly. So I love running those scenarios. And another thing too, you know, if people are in that situation, they've got the fixed mortgage, they want to move, maybe they have really good income. Maybe we run this scenario and I say to them, like, look, have you ever thought about just keeping this place as a rental? Because we can use that money, offset this and make this work. And, you know, things like that people don't always think about. And they're like, oh yeah, there you go. You made like a little bit of an investment along the way that you didn't think was something you could do.
Yeah. I actually had clients like that. They were like wanting to sell their place, and I can't remember, we were like talking, and I'm like, oh, but like you should just keep this place, rent out top, because that's what Cody and I have done. We've done it a couple of times now, how we have a few rentals. They're like, oh, I was telling them about it, and then it ended up coming out that they're like, oh, but you don't want to sell our house. And I'm like, I would love to sell your house, but I want to build you wealth.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I just lost your freaking sale. However, I'm like, I just did something so good for you. And like, they have all this equity sitting in their home. Like, they're a young family. I'm like, the thing is that I would rather them be happy. And like you said, give them options so that they can make the best choice for themselves instead of like choosing their fate for them, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing at the end of the day. Yeah. You don't know. And I don't like it. It makes no difference to me if people end up choosing the variable or the fix. Like it really doesn't matter. I'm happy to do either. I have no like stake in the game either way. Yeah. It's just, I just think that you should know what your options are and what that kind of looks like over the course of time. Cause I mean, some people are just like, they're comfortable with making the $2,600 payment, and they don't have to ever worry about it. They don't have to look at the news or see the announcements, and just, you know, it's not for everybody.
As soon as they learn about it, then they're gonna be pissed that they didn't do it 10 years earlier, because Tony on our team, who, when you showed this the first time, she's like, are you freaking kidding me? How many thousands of dollars?
Yeah.
But like, ignorance is bliss. You just don't know what you don't know. So, I mean, while, like you said, it sucks, not that it sucks, but not a whole lot of people showed up for this call today because it's not a super fun topic to talk about. Ignorance is not bliss. And like, people need to pay attention to these things, because we save you tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah. Or at least just work with somebody who will look after the clients in that way too. Right. It's just, it's just one of those things, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely. Anyways, okay, I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you guys for showing up. I appreciate it. Like, you know, it's nice.
All the good things. I love it.